Tuesday morning, everyone. Lovely to have you with us. I hope you're all well. This is the morning briefing from the Celtic Way with Hamish and Tony. Hello, Tony. How are you?
I'm very well, sir. Your good self?
Yeah, not bad. Listen, there's stuff happening. There was split fixtures announced yesterday. I don't know how meaningful you think they are. Certainly not as meaningful as last season when we were in the midst of a title battle. But they have allowed us to peer into the not too distant future and ponder where we might win the league. And I think it's fairly obvious that it might be Tannadice again for the second time in 4 seasons. This time during the day. Should be a special one.
Traditionally, they've won it at Tannadice a few times, haven't they? I think they did it in 1981. They did it in 2008. To my knowledge, other people will come in and the chat if they can remember other times.
Steve McGrory will be across that.
Yeah, Steve McGrory will be right across that. But yeah, 1981, because there's a great Tommy Burns goal where he whips into the top corner with his left foot. And then I think Danny McGreen's been carried shoulder high. Terrific kind of stuff. 2008, obviously, Tommy Burns was involved again. Sadly, passed away, but the team rallied and won the last 7 or 8 games of the season and couldn't do Rangers.
What day of the week was that game, Tony?
Thursday, wasn't it? Was it Thursday night?
Thursday night, yeah.
Rangers
I can't ever remember Celtic playing on a Thursday night domestically.
No. Rangers played Aberdeen at Pittodrie, didn't they? And lost 2-0.
Now they lost, yeah.
Yeah, and Jan Vennegoor scored the header. Pointed up was, didn't they? So, and then obviously they won it with Georges Giacomakis' header and a 1-1 draw.
Yeah.
Tannadice. So, yeah, I mean, it's featured very prominently when Celtic title wins. So, yeah, I mean, lots of nonsense last night, Hamish, on social media about Celtic throwing the game and then going to Ibrox to try and win the title. That's a garbage for me. Never want to see my team lose any fixture. Go and get the point and go to Ibrox as champions and display why you're champions. But that kind of notion that Celtic would throw a game deliberately, I can't entertain it. I won't entertain it. Each man to himself and every fan to themselves. I've said many times, I don't speak for the Celtic supporters. I speak for myself as a Celtic supporter. But I want Celtic to go and get the point. I want to actually go and get 3 points, but if they have to settle for a point, so be it. I want to be champions on April the 26th.
Yeah. Similarities to 3 years ago when we went to Tannadice needing a point. Similarities to 2 years ago as well. I'll talk about that in a wee second. Before that, just a quick word from our sponsor. This Celtic Way video is brought to you by S1 Jobs at the top of the screen there. If it's time to hand in your transfer request, then head over to s1jobs.com and upload your CV today. With thousands of jobs across Glasgow, Edinburgh and the surrounding areas, you'll find the one at S1 Jobs. Start your search today. We've also still got this offer going, Tony.
Yeah, and this has been extended. I'm not too sure the dates on that, but certainly been extended. So if you were thinking about subscribing for the Made by Frankie print, and you thought you were too late, you're not too late. It's been an extended period of time, so you know what to do. Subscribe, £1 for 6 months of access to all the quality stuff that's on the website, and you'll get that wonderful print. And it really is a wonderful print by renowned football artists, Made by Frankie. So that deadline's been extended. We'll let you know in the fullness of time when it will expire. But yeah, you've got a chance to subscribe to the website and own that print. It's worth doing.
Definitely. I was just mentioning there that there's real similarities to 2 years ago when we went into the split. I think at that stage needing one more win to win the title. This year we just need a point. But we went to Tynecastle in the first game and won the league there with, I think, a 2-0 victory that day. And then it was the derby up next. And I remember a wee bit of speculation at that time as well. And it was more of a talking point then, because I think even a draw at Tynecastle would have kept things alive going to Ibrox. But certainly this time, I mean, it's almost a moot point. Well, it's a complete moot point because Celtic are clearly going to go there and not just for a point. We're going to go there and try to win. And while we won it at Tannadice a few years ago, the team were really poor that night. Like, I think they were kind of caught up in the atmosphere in the moment, and it was a pretty poor performance. And we're kind of fortunate to get a draw that night. I think next Saturday we want to see a big performance and really do it in style, and then go to Ibrox and hopefully get a result there as well. But what an exciting few weeks we've got ahead.
Yeah, Hamish, they started on Saturday. They got their mojo back, didn't they? So win the next 7/8, because obviously you've got a Scottish Cup semi-final against St Johnstone coming up on Saturday. But if it's to be 8 games, go and do it in style. Reel off 8 wins. That's what I want.
Seven, I think. So I think is it 5 in the league and potentially 2 in the cup.
Yeah, but they, as I say, started on Saturday against Kilmarnock, so that would make it the last 8, wouldn't it? Is that right?
He's done me, everyone. He's done me.
No, I've not done you. I was just sort of saying that kind of treat that as a mini quarter of the season. You know, listen, 7 games, call it like 7 or 8. Don't know.
Yeah. But it was a good start, wasn't it?
Yeah, I just want Celtic to put their foot on the accelerator like they did on Saturday, because that half an hour was blinding football. It really was. And I think even Derek McInnes admitted it himself, didn't he? That you can't live with Celtic when they're in that mood. And the quality of the goals were excellent. And, you know, and that's what you want from the Celtic team. That's what you want at Tannadice as well. And if they do that, if they play like that half an hour for any lengthy period of time at Tannadice, they'll win the title that day. No problem. You trust these players to do that. When they're on song, they really are bang at it. It's when they're not and they just feel, you know, instead of making things happen, they just kind of have that laissez-faire, it's going to happen. That's when they come unstuck. And I think that's what frustrates the life out of Brendan Rodgers, because he knows it's there. And there is real no excuse for not to produce it.
Yeah, the weekend showed that it was there and the hunger was still there. The team have just got to build on it now. And I mean, you look at the next 3 games, weekend, chance to get to the cup final. Big game. It's a Scottish Cup semi-final on Sunday. Big crowd in for that one. Then we go to Tannadice to win the league. Obviously goes without saying, a big one. And then the final derby of the season, and not a meaningless one, even if the league is clinched by then. I think everyone really will want to get a big positive result there, given that we've lost the last 2 derbies and been unconvincing in the last 3 against Rangers. So opportunity for the team. So just briefly, if you missed all the fixtures, this is what Celtic's end of the season looks like. So St Johnstone at Hampden on Sunday. Next Saturday, we're away at Dundee United. We then go to Ibrox the following Sunday, so that's a Sunday noon kick-off. We then host Hibs at Celtic Park. We then go to Pittodrie, Aberdeen, for a midweek game, our only midweek game that's left. Trophy Day will be at home to St Mirren for the 2nd successive season, which is interesting. And then hopefully the following Saturday the 24th of May, one day out, Tony, but we'll see you for it. Although it's kick-off here when I'm watching, it'll be the 25th of May, so I'm claiming that as the Scottish Cup final, and hopefully we're there as well. So an exciting end to the season.
This is always an exciting spell, and I've said before, see when your club's not involved in the end of showpiece game in the Scottish Cup final, you switch off. Used to annoy me as a kid. It still annoys me as an adult, because I always want Celtic, to quote the manager, to burst through the tape and accelerate through the finishing line and be in that Scottish Cup final regardless of who the opposition is. But they've got a job to do on Saturday, and I think they'll be very mindful of what happened at McDiarmid Park, and I don't think that's a bad thing. Just give you the wee G up that you needed, that you can't afford to be off it at all. But I think the smart money says it's the big, wide, expansive greenery in Mount Florida, and it might suit Celtic slick passing game. But, you know, Simo Valakari's ripped up St Johnstone's kind of style recently, and you know, they are 5 points behind with 5 games to play, so they're in with a fighting chance of escaping relegation. It will be tough for them. This will be seen as a bonus game, but I know where their priorities lie. It'll be in the league to keep consolidate their top flight status. Not saying they're going to throw the towel in this one, but, you know, I think if you would offer them the Scottish Cup final or top flight status, you know, consolidated, you would take the latter. So I think Celtic have to really just be professional, be clinical, and be at it. I don't expect anything less. And the manager's never lost at Hampden, touch wood, 14 out of 14, isn't it? And they've just got an uncanny knack and habit of turning up, Hamish. I think we spoke the last time we were on. It reminds me of the League Cup semi-final. Remember Aberdeen came to Celtic Park, got a 2-week draw. Everybody thought they were the real deal. And that could have been 8-2 because Celtic threw the kitchen sink at them. And then 2 weeks later, blew them away in the Scottish League Cup semi-final. So it's got an air of that to me. Not saying the scoreline will be the same, but I think when push comes to shove and that button needs flicked and switched, Celtic players turn on.
Because, you think of the Scottish Cup games this season, and they've all been at Celtic Park, but the team, I think, have been pretty good in all the Scottish Cup games. What was it, Kilmarnock? I know we only won that 2-1, but it was pretty good. Wraith Rovers was as one-sided a game as you'll ever see. And Hibs as well, against a Hibs team that I think have only lost that game in their last 20-odd, was a really polished performance. So that's all well and good. Just final point in the fixture, if anyone's wondering, 3 games live on Sky Sports. So Tannadice, when we can win the league, will be on Sky. The following week's Derby is on Sky Sports, and the other game is, of course, Trophy Day on the 17th of May. But I want to talk a little bit about Brendan Rodgers today, and he's obviously kind of been saying some things over the past week, and he got everyone's tongues wagging on Friday when he was speaking about how you guard against complacency at a club like Celtic, and he made the comment you either have to refresh the playing squad or you have to change the manager, and him saying change the manager got everyone wondering whether that was him hinting that he's going to leave the club. Because I think, as John touched on yesterday, I can't remember if he did this on the video or away from the video. I think it was on the video. He said, we're all just a little bit nervous about Brendan Rodgers, given what happened last time. And listen, this time at the club, he's I don't think he's given any indication that he would leave mid-season or anything like that. But I think we're all just a little bit scarred from the first time, and people have been wondering whether he'll leave at the end of the season. He then, after the game on Saturday, made it very clear that unless Dermot Desmond decides differently, Brendan Rodgers will be with us next season. And clearly, Dermot Desmond isn't going to, get rid of Brendan Rodgers. So he will be our manager next year. But his contract's up at the end of next season, everyone. So what happens beyond then? Is he going to sign a new contract? I know you were speaking to some people yesterday who had some thoughts on that. And do you want Brendan Rodgers back for potentially year 4? Or is it maybe time for change at the club after 3 years? It's an interesting topic, Tony. I thought we could have a go at that today, so people can send in their thoughts as well.
I've already nailed my colours to the mast on this one. I'm convinced he'll sign a new deal. I really am. I think that'll be one of many topics to discuss in the summer, and also in terms of the recruitment and the new playing staff coming in. But he's Dermot Desmond's man. And I think he's played a blinder here, hasn't he, Brendan? the very thought of him, departing again. People are running around like that famous scene in Airplane where they say they've ran out of coffee. All hell breaks loose.
Never seen it, but I'll take your word for it.
Yeah. Well, the pilot says we've run out of coffee, and just all hell breaks loose in the plane. So, great moment. Actually, very funny. But yeah, so I think Brendan, I said before, he's very calculated and clinical, and he's cold and ruthless at times. And I think he was just sort of putting the feelers out there to see how the supporters felt about him. There are some who will never accept him, Hamish, and want him gone for what happened the first time. Still feel like that. That's fine. As I said earlier, each supporter to their own. But I think Celtic have the best man in situ for the job right now, and he wants to turn Celtic into a team that are regular competitors in the Champions League and get to the stage where they got to and beyond this season. That progress, I don't think he's bringing the likes of Kieran Tierney back and Jota back to leave them after a year, do you? I could be wrong in that, but you want to see that development through, and then you want to add even more quality. I think you want to see if Engels can develop as well into the player that is clearly there, but maybe needs a bit more help. So that will all be in the discussions in the summer about recruitment that kind of stuff. So I'm convinced he'll sign a new deal, because I don't think Dermot Desmond would want to let him walk at this juncture. I've got to be honest. And I think everybody enjoyed the Champions League this year. Yeah. And they would be excited for what could happen in the future with a much improved squad.
He's spoken a fair bit, I think, when he came right back to the club at that first press conference, but also a number of times this season about the hurt that he caused when he left to go to Leicester. And I think he's very aware of that. And personally, I think the reason he came back to Celtic is that he wants to kind of salvage his reputation to an extent and be remembered really fondly, because I think when he left the club, clearly the way he left and caused a fair amount of frustration. You can't deny that, at the club first spell he was incredibly successful, but I think the way he left caused a fair amount of hurt, and I think he probably struggled a fair bit with that. Given that he is a Celtic fan, he grew up a Celtic fan, his family are full of Celtic fans, so I think he'll have been aware of the heart, and I think that's why he's back to do better in Europe. Obviously, that's the main thing, but also to win domestic trophies are probably the main thing. But I think Europe's where he really kind of gauges his improvement, and I don't think he would leave mid-season again just because of the hurt that caused last time. So I know we've been bitten before, but I do think that when he leaves the club, it will be at the end of a season, and hopefully he'll be remembered, incredibly fondly. I do think there's a conversation over his record at clubs, and he's been immensely successful at virtually every club he's gone to. But as the years have gone on, there has been a bit of a regression generally in his teams, and I'm not sure the reason for that. That people can speculate towards that. But we even saw that first time at the club, that clearly Invincible season, the team were unbelievable. Second and third season, while they continued to win domestic trophies, and Brendan Rodgers would argue back and say, I won a treble in the second season. I already had the League Cup under my belt, and basically the league clinched in my third before I left. But clearly the football in the second and third season wasn't quite as good. There maybe would be a concern that, can Brendan Rodgers be the manager at Celtic for 4, 5, 6 years and continue to hit those really high standards? I know he spoke about that last week about, changing the playing squad, and maybe that's the big difference here from his first spell at the club. But that is a talking point as well for me. Like, is there a point at the end of next season where maybe it is time to look at something fresh to avoid there being a big regression?
But I think that's what he was talking about in terms of either the manager or the players, because he's worked with a few of these players now for a couple of years, and so they need new players to come in, don't they? And but legacy is important to him. Yeah. And I genuinely think, what Celtic would be, now 4 in a row, and depending on who comes in on the other side of the city to take it over on a permanent basis, if it's somebody he thinks he can get the better of, and he'll think he can get the better of them regardless. But if it's somebody like the current incumbent, then he would maybe think, do you know what, could do another couple of years there, take it to 6, take it to 7, take it whatever. I think he'll think like that, but his ambition has to be backed by the board as well. This board have to say to the manager, or Dermot Desmond has to say to the manager in the summer, okay, what do you need this time around? And he has been sufficiently backed up until this point, but he was just putting that warning shot over the bow on Friday. We can't stand still. If you want more nights like Bayern Munich and many nights like RB Leipzig at that level of competition, we need a refresh here. We need players. We need new players, because, and maybe he was sort of saying, all the guys that are here now know how I work. We need other players to come in and learn how we work and improve us and make us better. And I know exactly what you're saying about that tapering off with these clubs.
Yeah.
There was a tapering off at Liverpool, wasn't there? The famous Crystal Palace night. And then there was a tapering off at Leicester when it ended with a parting of the ways. And that's fine. That happens. But yeah, I still think that Brendan Rodgers will feel that he's got a couple of more years at least left at Celtic, possibly 3. I just think he was maybe seeing what the lie of the land was, because you're right, legacy is important to him. He does not want to leave in any shape or form out the back door like he did the last time, because he lost so many friends, didn't he? And I think family members turned on him a wee bit as well, and I think that stung him, that hurt him. That really hurt him. And so, yeah, and I don't think he would want anything similar to happen this time. He's still a relatively young man in terms of management, Hamish. He's 52, same age as myself, isn't he? So he can go along for the next, I don't know, the next decade plus in management, hasn't he? If he really wants. Just depends what he sees his future as, or where that's mapped out. But I'm sure Dermot Desmond in the summer will be saying to him, okay, let me know your thoughts. We would like this. And how can we help you achieve what you want to achieve? And it'll be, you'd always want to be the fly on the wall in those conversations, wouldn't you? And to overhear what's been spoken about. But I think he was just kind of outlining. I've said before that he signposts things, doesn't he? I think he was just sort of saying that there has to be a big refresh in the summer. There has to be an influx of players in order to, if you want to continue to enjoy the season that you did in Europe like last season, and these are the things that we have to do.
Yeah, it's just strange because you look at the squad, and I think a lot of people have questions about a lot of players in that squad, and I spoke about this yesterday. A number of the signings from last summer, I don't think have been like disasters by any stretch of the imagination. Engels, Trusty, Ida, but a lot of people have question marks over those 3 players, certainly. But yet you look at this season, and it has been a good season, and especially the European stuff. I mean, I know we're kind of out of that now, and I guess that buzz people had is lost slightly, because those months from September to February were brilliant, weren't they? With 10 European games, but Celtic were brilliant. And on the whole, when you look at where we'd been previously in Europe, for us to get, I think, 12 points and only lose twice in the league phase, and then run Bayern Munich so close, like, there was real improvement in that. And you wonder if we could push on again next year, and how far we really could go under the manager.
Bayern Munich performance is your benchmark, right? And the RB Leipzig performance at home. You dominated a club. And as I've said before, I think one of the highlights of Brendan Rodgers' season this year will be that second goal against RB Leipzig at home, where they shut them down, the high press, won the ball back and scored just before half time. And the goal itself was simplicity, but it was the work that was done in order to create that goal. I think that'll be one of his high points of the season. And obviously the performance in Munich, which blew everybody away, and came so close. Again, coveted with, caveated with the fact that they got knocked out. But it's a long time since you've seen Celtic play like that in an away tie in Europe. And it filled you with real hope for the future, where this manager could take this team if people upstairs. And, Dermot Desmond was there. He saw it. He had a ringside seat. So the manager just turns around and says, look, you were there that night. You saw for yourself what this team is capable of. I could take it to the next level. Could you get to a quarter-final? Last 16, last 8. Of course you can. You've shown that you can go toe-to-toe with, some top European teams. That's what you want from Celtic. I love the domestic dominance, Hamish, but you're like me. You crave it in Europe.
Yeah.
And this season was great. It whetted my appetite. And then the next thing I was thinking of after Celtic lost to Bayern, or were knocked out by Bayern Munich, I was like, right, when can we do this again? Because it was brilliant. I loved the new format, and it gave Celtic a fighting chance. And they took it. So I think the manager realised that in those moments. And you see that ultra marathon that he spoke about from September to February, everybody's, senses were heightened, weren't they? The players as well. And there was a notable tapering off as soon as it all finished, didn't it? As soon as it ended. So I think you think to yourself, right, that's where we want to be, because that's where big clubs, act like a big club and perform like a big club. And I think Celtic in Europe this season did that.
Just a few comments. Jason saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, should be the mantra, especially if we're competitive in Europe again. CJ, I think Brendan is building something here and he wants his legacy. He is the best man for the job. Jason, we're lucky to have Rodgers. Seamus, back the manager and he will stay. Simple as. Kenny saying Brendan will have a 12-month rolling contract. Maestro, if he gets back, he'll stay. His goal is progress in Europe. And Plunge saying Brendan will sign on for an extra year. Does anyone watching this think that at the end of next season Celtic should go in another direction? I'm interested if there's anyone out there, or if everyone thinks Brendan Rodgers is the right guy to take us on after that. Obviously that's a year away. We don't know what's going to happen next season. I do feel that if Brendan Rodgers is still doing well at Celtic and we're still winning trophies, don't need to win every trophy, but if we're still winning trophies, it's basically going to be up to him whether he wants to continue and sign a new deal, because Celtic clearly are going to want to keep him on. I mean, there's no way that if the team are winning that Celtic are going to, remove him and go in a different direction. So my question would be, is it as simple as match his ambition and he'll keep signing on and keep, taking us forward for another few years, or is it more complicated than that? I mean, but by the end of next season, he'll have been Celtic manager for almost 6 years.
Doesn't need to be more complicated than that, though, does it? I think it is as simple as that. You've got an ambitious manager who has vaulting ambition to take you to a level in Europe, back over the net to those who pull the purse strings or control the purse strings. If Brendan Rodgers says, I would like X, Y, and Z, are you going to give him X, Y, and Z? And, so that's the conversation to be had. And, I just don't see Dermot Desmond turning around and saying, you're not getting that, because he's earned it. And I know there's been games this season where they've not been quite at it. And you can, there are extenuating circumstances, Hamish, but they manoeuvred themselves into the position where, they could not be at it in certain games and the damage was pretty limited, wasn't it? I don't concern myself with what happens over the other side of the city. Really, I don't. I'll see the results, and if it's a game where I think there's jeopardy there, I might tune in. But I concern myself with what Celtic do. It's always about what Celtic do for me and us, and I would imagine a vast majority of the Celtic supporters. And for a period of this season, from August to about October, November, December, Celtic were excellent. They were excellent. So they built up this healthy lead in the league, and they're human. The players are human. Every now and again they took a dunt and they thought, doesn't really matter much in the grand scheme of things. But I think the problem for the manager and a lot of the supporters there were too many examples of that this season. What was it, 14-point ships since the turn of the year? Any other title race you're in bother, aren't you? But it wasn't any other title race because you were kind of running away with it, and again, your rivals couldn't mount a significant gallop, but that's not your concern. Your concern is just winning titles and trophies. And and I think that's why the manager had his blast at Perth, talking about the mentality. He's followed it up with what he said in the pre-match Kilmarnock, and then followed that up on the Saturday by saying, we're still going to be here. No, there is no agenda here. But I think he was just sort of saying, listen, this is what I need. This is what we need to move forward as a football club. And just, because those talks are looming large, aren't they?
Yeah. I mean, we need to push on next year, because that's... It might not be like the worst thing at the end of this season. Obviously, we really want to finish the season strongly, but this period we've had where for a number of months the football in the main hasn't been as good as the first half of the season. It might not be the worst thing in terms of like convincing everyone that we still are a work in progress really as a team, because maybe kind of everyone inside the club, whether it be players or I don't know if the manager would fall into that, but certainly maybe some in the boardroom would have looked at some of the results we had in the first half of the season, especially in Europe, and thought, okay, we've kind of got this now. The reality is, I think that we still need to push on, and there's players we really like in that first team, but there's players that can certainly be improved on, I think, and we need more options. I think we saw that in Munich, for example, when we basically had no real game changers off the bench at that level. So that's something I'd be looking to push on with, and just a bit of a freshness, because it does feel maybe that things have gone a little bit stale, and there's maybe just a few players that have just been kind of kept around a little bit too long, and we might see them moving on in the summer and potentially new blood coming in. Kieran Tierney's going to make a big difference.
Huge difference.
And hopefully everyone at the club's got the same idea as the manager, and they realise that, yeah, we're winning every domestic trophy and we're doing well in Europe, but we need to be better again next season. And it's almost a thankless task, because as good as you are, you're always striving to be better, but that's top level sport.
You need to be tone deaf not to listen to the manager, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And in the past, who are the ones that have been tone deaf? Those upstairs. Again, I go back to he's signposting it. He's telling you this is what we need. We need a refresh. We need a refresh of players. I mean, you can speculate. He'll never put a number on it. Hamish has to how many players he needs. But I think Brendan Rodgers will be wanting at least 4 or 5 new players.
Yeah.
Whether he gets that or not is another thing, but he'll certainly that'll be the baseline, won't it? He'll want to refresh.
The money's there. The money's there for it. Like, there's no excuse still.
And I think that'll be his biggest argument. The money is there, and we took it to I got you to the playoff round. I can get you further. And with that comes prestige, and with that comes even more finance. So, and again, Dermot Desmond was, and Michael Nicholson, they were both in Munich when Celtic were doing their thing, came agonisingly close. So, you'd have to be tone deaf not to listen to this manager and his ambition and what he sees mapped out as a future for the club, competing both domestically and in Europe, because we've always said if Celtic are doing well in Europe, then the domestic stuff goes hand in hand, doesn't it? I get that you're a bounce of the ball, a decision away from being knocked out of a cup competition. That's the nature of knockout football. But as long as you say Celtic are winning the most important trophies, i.e. the league, and gaining access to the Champions League, and remember we've got one qualifier this year. That ain't going to be a push over. So you're going to have to, as I've said, the preparation for me started on Saturday against Kilmarnock. Use these games and then get your new blood in, and just go into that. You want to go into that swinging, with real momentum, and just keep that feel good factor going. So I want to win the last 8 games. I want the players to come in, hit the ground running in terms of pre-season. KT will be back, Jota will be having a full pre-season. That'll make a huge difference to that left-hand side of your team, and that's mouth-watering. And then if you can add a wee bit more sprinkling of quality in the Jota and Kieran Tierney-esque mould, you're not far off being a decent team. You just need to strengthen in the right areas. Clearly need another striker, don't we? I still want a powerhouse of a midfielder, and I'd even take another big bustling centre half that can win the ball in the air and clear it on the deck, stuff like that. But again, I'll leave that up to the manager, because you'll know his targets much better than me. But I think off the top of your head, that's what you're looking for, isn't it?
Yeah, Paul saying, don't forget we have to qualify next season. Yeah, Tony just mentioned that. It's going to be a big qualifier, that, and it's kind of going to set up the season, I think, when you think of how good Europe was this year. If you don't win that, then Europa League, your season immediately loses a bit of the buzz, so it'll be interesting. Final thoughts, Tony?
You need to prepare for that, don't you?
Yeah.
And I don't think the manager will accept anything less than 100% preparation for a qualifier of that magnitude, regardless of the opposition. It's a huge match. It'll be the most important match of the new season for Celtic. End of.
Certainly importance for the club in terms of reputation, obviously financial as well. I would agree. I probably won't play a more important match, potentially more glamorous matches, but that's going to be very important. And it's not too far away, really, when you think about it. We've got a few months of the season left, and then June, July, and then we're kind of into all that stuff. So great stuff. Tony, thank you once again. Thanks everyone for tuning in, watching, getting involved, not getting involved. Whatever you did, it's much appreciated. I will return this time tomorrow. I believe Ryan's going to be on with me at that stage.